It all started 6 years ago when Inez was sold to this country. Inez's wedding was the perfect marriage of convenience. She is a member of the Genio imperial family. Lane is the Archduke of the Lycian Empire, and their marriage has greatly helped in the unification of the two states. But in fact, this is not entirely true if you look at reality. This marriage was more like an apple that was rotten from the inside. Inez is the illegitimate daughter of the second Princess Geneo, born from a forbidden relationship. She was a disgrace to Geneo, trampling on the reputation of the majestic imperial family. In Lycan, the most powerful man of the Archduchy, Eleanor, took an illegitimate child into his family, and even his pride began to crack. He was always cold towards Inez, and he treated his son Caesar the same way. Caesar was very similar to his father, a small child with big green eyes. Caesar needed to communicate with his father, but he avoided him. It had been a week since he had visited Caesar, they reminded him. He was surprised that so much time had passed. He was asked to come and hug the child at least once. Could it be that she had made a mistake again today? She did not understand. Could it be that he would not visit Caesar today either? She picked up a cup of tea with its familiar aroma. She picked up the cup of poisoned tea again. It was too late to detox, the man said, and he didn't understand why she had only called him now. She understood that she didn't have much time left. Those idiots who didn't know about this were still busy torturing her. She already understood that she was a thorn that scratched their pride. And now it's time to pull out the unnecessary splinter. There was only one thing, but she was worried about Caesar. She asked His Highness to take care of his son, to appreciate and love him. She asked him to dress him in good clothes and put him to bed in a decent room. She asked him to make it so that he could eat his favorite food. She asked him to become a good father to his son. What she wanted now was for Caesar to grow up well, even if without her. 10 years will pass, then 20. Caesar will grow up completely and become independent. The years will fly by, but Caesar won't even be able to remember his mother. His Highness said that she was speaking the obvious, because whoever continues the Eleno line will receive due treatment. All this is because he does not know the way the people of this mansion look at her and Caesar, Inez said. And he is the same, Inez said about her husband. He doesn't let go only because it's a shame to leave. A man who is eagerly waiting for her to disappear, Inez added. She asked him to never forget the promise he made to her. He asked to stop this useless conversation. The reason why he called her here today was different. She felt that this answer was insincere, because he would definitely forget the promise he made to her. In that case, she thought, she must make sure that he doesn't forget anything. She said she hated him. She really did hate him. Why did he extend his hand to her that day? She asked him. Why did he do this? She had no choice but to love him. Why did he hug her? She had many questions for him. Having kept her with him, he threw her away at his own will and made it so that she could not escape. Why did he do this to her? She didn't understand whether he really hated her that much, and he only remained silent in response. She regrets to death that she chose him that day. She curses herself for loving him. He stood up and asked if she was cursing only him. He asked Inez if she was still really angry with him. She had only one thought in her mind. He was pretending to love her again. This affection that he sometimes shows to her, at one time she took it for love. He asked her to stop pestering him because she knew that nothing good would come of provoking him. Inez didn't understand what it meant to pester him. She considered him a cruel and arrogant man. Inez asked Lane what his face would be like if she died here. He clearly didn't take the question seriously. Inez took the cup and drank everything it contained. Afterwards, Inez dropped the cup on the floor. Blood slowly began to flow from her lips. Lane realized what was happening and shouted her name, but it was too late to save her. Inez asked Lane, even if there was a next life, to make sure they never saw each other again. In the end, Inez saw only Lane in the fading reality. Namely, she saw his green eyes, which were trembling very strongly. 6 years ago, the imperial palace of the Lycian Empire. What an absurdity to make a member of the imperial family, Geneo, the wife of the crown prince. How dare they demand such a thing? The count suggested to His Majesty that he cut off the ambassador's head and send him back. They could not fall for their tricks. The Lord told him that he shouldn't react to this so emotionally. The Count took this as the Lord suggesting that he ignore the attempts to humiliate Lai Shan. Everyone was faced with the same question, what to do, accept the absurd offer of the enemy state or refuse and resist. Summer passed. 1132, the Liqian Empire at the end of the 7-Year War. The 1,000-year Liqian Empire lost to the Holy Empire of Geneo. Geneo accepted Lai Can's request for a temporary truce, but she found a way to bring Lai Shan to his knees. She asked to arrange a marriage between Inez and the crown prince of Lai Shan. Besides, isn't the imperial family member Geneo an illegitimate daughter who doesn't even have a last name? The man asked the king. But the Lichens could no longer sacrifice their treasury and the young men of their empire. Will everything really fall apart if we give in to them now? The Count asked. He was sure that they were aiming at Lai Can itself. Archduke Eleanor sat quietly all this time and was asked to say what he thought about all this. He replied that he thought it was a small-scale Cold War. They said they wanted to have as a tame animal the most noble man, shining like the sun. But nowhere was it written that this tame beast, the heir to the throne, unless only the crown prince could rightfully claim the throne. Master of Lichun in the north and the vast wasteland in the west, ruler of the Archduchy of Eleno, war hero, second in line to the imperial throne. It was largely thanks to Eleno that Lai Shan did not allow his capital to be taken away. Eleno will be an even more threatening opponent than Geneo. Did they really deliberately allow Archduke Eleno to be used as a tame beast? The Archduke replied that he would accept a member of the imperial family, Geneo, as his wife. The emperor asked the Archduke whether this illegitimate daughter would definitely choose him and whether he could handle it. He replied that yes, it was enough to make her choose him, and it didn't matter in what way. But how did the Archduke intend to act? They asked him. It's not difficult, he is Mr. Eleno, said the Marquis. Luxurious and comfortable as a palace, a mansion with over 100 servants, and fine dining served every day. The Marquis suggested that there were many things that she could not enjoy in ordinary life, so if she was tempted by this. The emperor replied that Lycan had everything the same, and material things could not become a criterion for her choice. The Marquis did not understand what to do then. The Archduke said that there was nothing complicated, just as he had said. It would be enough to tell this woman that she will be treated like a human being, he said. An illegitimate child of the imperial family is worse than an insect. This woman in Geneo must never have been treated like a human being, the Archduke explained. He thought that a few words would be enough. In Eleno it would be different, better than in Lichun or in Geneo, because there they would look at her without contempt. Besides, he will say that he will love her. Then she would definitely fall for it, the Archduke was sure. It was cruel, even towards a woman from an enemy family. Will everything be all right? The Count asked. Although the Archduchy has authority, there was that incident with the illegitimate child 10 years ago. The Archduke could not forget that day 10 years ago. He entered the room and saw his mother and father on the floor, and next to them, with a sword in his hands, stood his uncle. He could not forget the day when his uncle, whom he followed more than his father, betrayed them. He doesn't like it, but he won't mix personal feelings and work. This means that he will not do anything that could harm him. Is he going to negotiate? Asked the emperor. As a price for the damaged authority of the Archduchy, the Archduke agrees to receive the Gelnoa plain. Gelnoa is a foothill plain, of which there are very few left in Lichun, but Eleno is the last shield that Lichun has left, and once he promised to deal with Geneo's illegitimate child. The emperor gave him Gelnoa. The Archduke was glad that their meeting did not last long. The emperor said that it was imperative to change the decision of this illegitimate child. In response, he heard that Lane Eleno would keep her promise, especially if her opponent was a small and weak woman. At this point, their meeting ended. In the hallway, Lane was called by his brother, who was walking behind him. He hoped and wanted to make sure that what Lane had said earlier was not true. Lane asked what His Highness was talking about. His brother asked him to speak more simply, since this was a personal meeting. He explained that he was talking about the illegitimate daughter of the imperial family, Geneo, and that he was going to love her. Lane didn't understand whether it mattered, whether it was true or not, what difference it made. Line told Edgar that he thought he was pleased, since Edgar did not want to accept this woman as the crown prince's wife. Line thought that his brother wanted to continue the war. Edgar was confused and said that he was not talking about that. Edgar believed that his brother was lying because they had grown up together since childhood. Perhaps this is why it is so difficult for them to assume that each other's intentions are sincere. As far as he knows, Lane Eleanor can't treat an illegitimate child like a human being. If she is an illegitimate child, one can assume that her fate is predetermined. Edgar only wished that she would be treated at least humanely. Wasn't the plan Lane was talking about too cruel? Edgar asked. It was like a deception. Lane replied that Edgar was too lenient towards a woman from an enemy state. Edgar was right about the deception, but was there another way to get this woman? Maybe she should be taken to the dungeon of the Imperial Palace, Lane asked. Edgar didn't understand what his brother was talking about. Lien continued. Maybe he should torture her, he asked. Or maybe break her bones, rip off her skin, keep her from sleeping for days. Lane asked if it was necessary to forcefully change her decisions and feelings. He didn't think so because there is a more effective method. It's enough that she's an illegitimate daughter. He doesn't really want her to become an archduchess. Edgar reminded his brother that they had seen her 8 years ago in Geneo, when they took part in a masquerade ball at the Imperial Fortress. Then she asked them what the name of the man in the white mask was. Edgar remembered her. He remembered that she was charming and simple. She was just one of the victims born in Geneo. Lane asked his brother if he was worried about him abusing the woman. But Lane wasn't such an emotional person. Lane won't care whether she's an illegitimate child or not, as long as he lives quietly as if she doesn't exist. A few years later, he might even be able to leave the Archduchy safely, Lane said. Inez, the name of the woman who would become Lane's wife and Archduchess. Inez was told that she shouldn't behave so stupidly in Lycan. She should remember everything she was taught. It was harsh. On the way from Geneo to Lichan, they didn't even wash her or feed her properly, the woman thought. Not only did she not cry, she didn't even groan. It's strange. They threw her onto the stone slabs, and there wasn't a scratch on her. Is it really true that she was born incredibly unlucky and with the seed of darkness? Lucifer must take Inez away. Before she goes, she is told to repeat the order of His Majesty. Inez repeated that she was ordered to go to Lichan, take a nobleman as a husband, and make them acknowledge their own insignificance. Kian asked Inez if she was okay. She replied that she was okay thanks to him. He wanted to kill everyone. He asked Inez if she was in a lot of pain now. How do you mean kill? Inez asked. Because Kian knows that it's impossible. He'll kill her too, she asked him. Kian is a creature of darkness who, although he protects Inez, sucks out her life force, he considers her his donor. He is the only one in the world who is on her side. She told him that she was perfectly fine and asked him to come back because someone might suspect something if they saw him. In the end, Inez reached Lyshan. The Imperial Palace was more graceful and antique than the Golden Palace in Geneo, Inez thought. In places in the Imperial Palace, one can feel the grandeur of a 1,000-year-old empire, which cannot be underestimated. But Inez could only visit 2 places, the prison and the largest and most radiant hall in the palace. She remembered the order. Inez had to make them rot from the inside out. She had to blind this man and give him an air of darkness with the seed she possessed. After all men are like that. They can't do anything in front of a skilled woman. No, she didn't want to do such vulgar things. Seduce a man she doesn't love. Give birth to an unwanted child, a deed that will destroy an entire empire. Maybe it would be better to run away, she thought. It would be possible if she borrowed power from Kian. If she shortened her life by 10 years, maybe she would be able to escape. She still couldn't know how and when she would die, so wouldn't it be better to live the rest of her life freely, she thought. A guy came up to Inez and grabbed her face. Dirty and smooth, it was specially brought in this form. He asked Inez, "Watch your words, Knight Lycaner," she said. Lay approached Inez from behind and said that he would walk her. She liked Lane. It was the first time she had seen hair of such a wonderful silver colour. "Your Highness, you have come," said the knight and bowed before them. Here Inez realized that only one person with silver hair in Lychan was called His Highness. Could it really be him? Lane was interested in his order, which he gave to the commander of the Knights, to bring Inez straight to Eleno's room. Lay told him to forget about the order. Now he would carry it out himself, as the knight himself did not understand personally. Several years ago, when Inez was studying the personal data of the Lycian aristocrats, she saw his portrait. So this portrait doesn't reveal even half the beauty of the one depicted in it, Inez thought. She was already in love with Lane. Lane said that he would take Inez to the room in the palace where she would be staying and asked her to follow him. On the way they got into a conversation, Lane said that he heard that the road here was difficult for Inez. She replied that it wasn't enough to worry about, but thanked Lane. Lane was glad to hear it, but he was sure that she was definitely tired from the journey, so she should rest. He said that she would be here until the welcoming ceremony took place. Inez felt sad. He was also posh, living in such a magnificent palace. And she was like a beggar who was being trampled on the street, which was to be expected with her background, she thought. But for some reason, Inez felt that she would feel even worse if this man looked at her the same way as the others. Either because he is the only person she knows in a foreign land, or because he is one of those men who needs to be seduced. Even though she wanted him to take her seriously, Inez asked Lane if they had seen each other a long time ago. She thought they had seen each other somewhere, but she had a conflicting desire for him to be lenient with her. Lane thought Inez would follow him. Her weak character was innate, Lane thought. Could it be that she was the only one who remembered that they had already met somewhere, Inez thought. If this was the case, then Inez decided not to talk about it anymore. This woman didn't belong in this place at all, Lane thought. Hunched shoulders, dirty dress, black hair cut haphazardly, nothing to look at. As Inez passed, the maid standing behind her laughed and began to whisper. Lane thought it would be bad if rumours started to circulate about the woman who would become Archduchess Eleanor. Lane made a remark to the maids, asked them to observe decency, and they apologised. He put the jacket on Inez and said that then he seemed to tell her that they would definitely meet again someday. He said that Inez looked too naive and small to be anyone's headache. Inez was glad that he remembered. She was already sure that he had forgotten about that incident. Lane thought it was a useless memory, but if it lowered her guard, it wasn't a bad start, he thought. Inez apologised for not recognising him then because he was wearing a mask. No need to apologise, Lane said, thinking again. She had had a hard time all her life, so she wanted to cling to even short intersections of fate. Lane felt uncomfortable, although it had no value for him. The more important question for him was how much longer he had to stand here and waste time. Still, she didn't fit in here at all, he thought again. Lane brought Inez to a special room in the Imperial Palace. He introduced her to the maids who would carry out her orders while she was in the Imperial Palace. She could order them around whatever she wanted, maybe even spank them if they behaved rudely. He was speaking firmly and too formally again, Inez thought, and it made her sad. Lane told Inez that she needed to take a bath first and then eat. Inez was delighted with the room in which she would live for the entire time she was in the palace. She considered the room luxurious. She had more than 20 servants, something she could not even dream of in Geneo. Besides, spanking, if you look at her past life, what she lived, then rather she should receive it and not spank someone. Inez felt uncomfortable. She felt like this place was too much for her, she told Lane. She asked to be given a less luxurious, ordinary room. Lane said this place was perfect for her. The Elenos always treated guests with dignity. Lucifer thanked Lane, saying that this was a suitable room for the future wife of the Crown Prince. Lane wished Inez a good rest and was about to leave. Inez did not want to let him go. Inez felt like she was going crazy. Not wanting to stay in the same room with Lucifer, she was unknowingly trying to stop Lane. Lucifer was thinking that it seemed Lichan was sparing money for the Imperial Palace. No precious stones, no tiles. Lane approached him. He asked which room Lucifer was going to follow. Lucifer replied that he was a bodyguard responsible for Mrs. Inez. His target was next to her. Then Lane asked Lucifer if surveillance was his goal. He called him to talk. Lane wondered if Lucifer was really a bodyguard, because if he was going to do something bad, he could get beheaded for it, he warned him. True, Lucifer thought, because if Inez screwed up, he would have to kill her immediately. She knew about it. That's why she was shaking so much. Judging by her appearance, while she was being watched, she would choose the crown prince. Lucifer replied that as a member of the delegation who came from Guinea, he was like the face of the empire. Judging by her face, all they did was watch her, Lane replied to Lucifer. This man had picked the wrong guy, Lucifer thought. Lane took the sword in his hands. He told Lucifer that it was none of his business for what purpose Lucifer was sent from Guinea, but he must understand perfectly well that his mission interferes with Lane. Lenny ordered that Lucifer be removed and locked away somewhere so that he would not appear nearby. Lane needed him alive until Inez chose a husband. Several days have passed since Inez has been living in an unfamiliar room with unfamiliar people. She felt unusual. No one was beating her or looking at her with a contemptuous gaze. She only had to turn around, and the servants always had a polite smile on their faces. Every day, new things filled her room. Inez was changed. They put jewelry on her, and when she suddenly looked in the mirror, it was as if a stranger was sitting in front of her. In front of her, she saw a girl with exquisitely braided hair, in a luxurious dress. In just a few days, there was no trace left of the shabby, illegitimate daughter. Inez didn't believe that this girl was really herself. The maid told Inez that the green color really suited her. After all, His Highness has taste. Inez asked her what His Highness meant. She explained that they were servants working in the Archduke's mansion, which is why they called it that. True, thought Inez, because this room is called Eleanor's room. Inez wanted to meet Lane again. After that moment when she took his hand, hoping that he would not leave and she would not be left with Lucifer, he did not come to her anymore. She understood that he had no reason to visit her, since his role as an escort was already over. But why then did he send her all these gifts? She didn't understand what it was all for. Inez wanted to meet him. She didn't understand if she could accept such things. She wanted to talk to him. Inez was haunted by the thought of what kind of place Eleanor's archduchy was, and whether it was open to such a dirty, illegitimate child as she. Kian appeared and told Inez that nothing could or should be trusted now. Inez already knew that there is no good without a price, and such things cannot be given to her for free. However, for some reason she no longer wanted to run away and give up part of her life. Who knows, Inez told Keanu, maybe there is another way out of this situation. Here she could eat delicious food, wear good clothes, because she also wants to live a happy life. The next day came and Lane went to visit Inez. He was delighted. The new image suited Inez very well. He was very surprised. This silver dress went well with blue eyes and black hair. Lane said that the maid who chose this dress had very good taste. He asked Inez if everything was okay with her now. Inez was doing great. Everyone was treating her well, and she thought this place was wonderful. She thanked Lane for his care. Lane was glad that Inez had gotten used to it, to being treated well in this house. But still, Inez felt awkward. Everything had changed so much. In any case, it was like a fleeting dream for her, so she decided not to get used to this attitude. Inez felt like Lane's expression hadn't changed at all, which was strange because Inez felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Lane gave Inez a necklace with a beautiful green shining stone. The stones were the colour of His Highness's eyes. He said he liked the way she looked, even more than he liked her before. Lane felt that his plan was working and that he would soon win Inez's heart. Inez wondered why Lane was so kind to her, why he treated her this way, not like everyone else. He took her to his home, dressed her in beautiful clothes, and gave her precious gifts. It seemed like no one had ever paid attention to this girl in her entire life, Lane thought. If things were different, she wouldn't be talking like that. In fact, all Lane did this week was send his assistant to get a gift. And he himself just casually took the necklace in his hands. Everything turned out to be simpler than he thought. Those born out of wedlock, like his uncle, always crave love and attention. Lane moved so close to Inez that she became visibly nervous. Every time she blinked her trembling eyelashes, you could see her blue eyes in all their glory. Who know nothing about this cruel world, eyes full of kindness and sincerity. And what would happen if he touched those red lips, Lane thought? What kind of eyes would this innocent girl look at him with? What her voice would be like, these thoughts haunted Lane. Lane couldn't contain his interest and kissed Inez right on the lips. Inez felt very strange at that moment. She didn't understand what was happening to her. She had the opportunity to push him away, but she didn't want to do it at all. This kiss was certainly cheeky, but she didn't feel disgusted at all, quite the opposite. Why did he kiss her so suddenly, she thought. She was told what to do in such a situation. But she didn't want to ask him why he did it, in which case she could come up with the answer herself. Are all aristocrats like the Duke? Inez asked. She was interested in what kind of person this crown prince was. She wanted him to be at least a little as kind as Lane. She heard that His Highness was the crown prince's cousin, and they had known each other since childhood. She still hasn't met the crown prince. But when she saw his portrait in Gineo, it made a pleasant impression on her. Lane told her that if she was interested in the crown prince, she should leave the room tomorrow. Since His Highness was living in the palace, she could probably meet him while walking in the garden. He was back to his polite tone, Inez thought, so elegant but cold, acting as if nothing had happened. How is that possible? Inez was upset. A person who can do anything and not look strange. She was asking about the crown prince, as if she was mocking him, Lane thought, and this was right after the kiss. He realized that he had made a mistake after all, that he had forgotten himself so much that he now felt like an idiot. But all this did not matter, he told himself. This weak woman would come running to him in tears if she faced harsh treatment again. Lane asked Inez to tell him how it all went when she returned from her meeting with the crown prince. He thought it would be nice to see tears in her eyes when she returned. Perry sent Inez alone, telling her to walk carefully along the path and then come back the same way. On the way, Inez heard a lot of conversations. People around her said that she was not as bad as they thought, but compared to the crown prince, she was still not the same. She felt many stares on her. They were as natural to her as the simple dress she had arrived in. But Inez was the one who knew this better than anyone else. All these conversations were the same for her. She was used to people despising her, but just by looking into a person's eyes, she could immediately understand what he thought of her. Only he was an exception because he hid his facial expression. However, even though her heart began to pound at the sight of him, she was in no hurry to trust him. After all, he may be good-natured in appearance, but that's not all. But if you think from Eleanor's point of view, she can find the answer to this question. A child born out of wedlock cannot be given the title of crown prince, perhaps an attempt to take second place in line to the throne. She realized that he might be getting closer to her for his own benefit. Kian appeared and said that if she wanted to escape, now was the time to do it. He said that she had to do it, even if she had to pay for the escape with part of her life. He was Inez's mysterious friend who had settled inside her heart since birth. Well, maybe we should go now, said Kian. Why waste time? In the distance, Inez saw the crown prince walking towards her. Inez ran away from Kian without ever responding to his offer to run away. The crown prince passed by the place where Inez stood. Black hair and eyes as blue as the sea, Crown Prince Inez recalled. All this was like a dream that would never come true for him. He heard her name 8 years ago. Since then, it has become like a thorn for him, which sometimes causes him a feeling of longing and sadness. He ordered to strengthen security at the border, and if a person with black hair and blue eyes crosses it, immediately report to him. Should he be brought by force? Asked the knight. The Crown Prince answered negatively. He ordered that care be taken to ensure that this man crossed the border unharmed. Perhaps, as the Crown Prince of Lichan, he did wrong. Perhaps the war will start again, but soon he will need to visit Gineo again. Inez disappeared. The maid came to the Archduke and told him how she went into the garden for a walk, but did not return until sunset. He ordered to check if she was lost somewhere, because she had nowhere to go, and she was so helpless that she was most likely lost, he thought. Perry said that they had already checked everything. She asked the court knights to check not only the rooms, but the entire garden. But even so, after several hours, they still couldn't find her. The Archduke was furious. What did it mean that they couldn't find her? How was this to be understood? Lichan is a completely unfamiliar country for her, he said. The royal palace is well guarded. Even if she managed to escape, she still wouldn't be able to get through the main gate. Lane recalled how she spoke with gratitude about the fact that he accepted her and gave her precious gifts. He didn't understand how she could run away if she said such things. He didn't see the point in it. Lane looked around her room. He couldn't understand if she really left, leaving everything except what she brought with her. It was obvious she left without taking anything with her, Perry said. But how could she leave in those clothes? She left, leaving behind everything Lane had given her. Lane Eleanor was the kind of man who always failed to get what he wanted. Even Inez, a mere illegitimate child, was not his. She couldn't have gone far, Lane said, and he ordered the knights to be gathered. But then he changed his mind and cancelled the order, saying that he would go look for her himself. Where could a girl who had just come of age run to in a country where she had no one? Lane wondered. Even if she disappears without a trace, she will be caught in 5 days at most. However, they couldn't catch her even after 7 months. No one understood where she could have gone. Having turned everything upside down in Lishan, Inez, the symbol of temporary truce, was never found. After this, the relationship between Lichan and Janeo quickly deteriorated. 3 months later, a carriage with the crown prince appeared on the road leading to Janeo. Even with Eleno's participation, the need to conclude a new agreement would not disappear, thought the crown prince. Apparently, even this illegitimate child is not the best option. It seemed that the request to find Inez was not to show Geneo's power, but rather there was another reason. It has been confirmed that Inez is currently in Tyrant. Although there is no reason to worry, she has not left this city for several months. She probably has health problems. But it would be better to check, the Crown Prince decided, to be sure of all this. How nice it would be, he thought, if she ran away somewhere across the sea, to the eastern continent. Since they could not leave the affairs of state unattended for long, he was sure that his brother would also soon give in. Eleanor, the illegitimate son, thought the same. 10 years ago, his uncle brutally killed his parents and escaped. But he did not give up, but pursued him to the end, to do to him the same thing that he did to his parents. This time, he decided to do the same with Inez. Robert's herbal shop. Inez appeared there. "You won't live long," the man told her, looking at her. As expected from someone who has been studying medicinal herbs for 50 years, Inez thought. Then Inez asked Mr. Robert how long she would live. There was no malice, no despair, not even regret in her eyes, Robert thought. But does he know how much longer she will live? He answered Inez. Inez knew that he knew everything perfectly well. She asked him to answer her question. She wanted to know. Robert explained to her that she would not be able to live long if she did not take care to gain at least a little weight. Even if he fed her the best food, her body would not accept it. She asked if she would live 10 years if she started trying from now on. Robert remained silent, but 5 years, Inez asked again. After a month of taking blood-thinning herbs, Inez was able to stand on her feet and walk again. Robert scolded Inez, saying that if she continued to come to the pharmacy and do nonsense, she would not even live a year. But Inez didn't understand how she could spend so much time if she sat in her room and didn't go anywhere. She wanted to repay Robert at least half of what he had done for her. He said that if she took a walk, that would be enough for him. Inez told Robert that she didn't need it, but he didn't even want to listen to it. Then she promised to obey him if he told her how many years she actually had left. He said that if she didn't overwork herself and took her medications, she would live another 10 years. Inez didn't expect that she had so much time left. He asked her not to carry heavy things like medicine boxes. They were out of flour, so he sent her to the mill to place an order. Kairan is separated from Geneo and Laichan. It is also a port city through which Inez can go to the eastern continent at any time. She felt calmer here. It's good that they came here, Inez told Keanu. Even if her life was cut in half, she did not regret what she did, since it was her first independent choice. This place was like a dream to her. It was full of kind and nice people. But they are like this because they don't know who she really is, Inez thought. She knew that there was no free kindness in this world, so she helped Robert. She would be fine if she could live like this for another 10 years, but it was only when she came here that she found out that the air outside the royal palace was so clean and fresh. But she still sometimes wonders how things would have turned out if she had stayed there. What would have happened if she had married His Highness the Archduke? She realized that these were stupid thoughts and she meant nothing to him. On the way, Inez noticed a girl with whom something had clearly happened. "What's the matter?" she asked the girl standing next to her. She was interested in what had happened here. The woman said that she thought it was her daughter. She raised her for 10 years, but it turned out that she was illegitimate. It seems she hid her pregnancy and remarried. There has been a lot of buzz lately about illegitimate children, both within and outside the country, and this place is no exception. "Maybe something happened," Inez asked the girl. The girl said that her illegitimate child had gone missing, and it seemed that this had led to big problems. In search of this child, Eleanor arrived here with a request for cooperation, the girl continued to tell. And all because illegitimate children destroy families and bring problems to the country, Inez was unpleasant to hear this. Lane couldn't even imagine that Inez had fled to another country. Ever since Eleanor learned of the existence of the servant who regularly reported news of Inez to the Crown Prince, his surveillance of her became even more secretive. He seemed to be very eager to take the Crown Prince's place, Lane thought. He decided to go to Tyrant. The knight told Lane that they had received information from the knights who had been sent to Hiron during the day. Inez felt sorry for the girl and approached her to ask if everything was okay with her. She looked bad. Inez invited her to go with her. Inez felt uneasy that she was only bothering Robert. If only she could do something good, she thought, but Robert never complained either. During the day, an incident occurred at the market. A man beat his young wife. It seems that the maid who worked for Count Iger's family married someone else, hiding the fact that she was pregnant with the Count's child. They say that when he found a beaten woman in the market, he took her to his home. Meanwhile, Inez and the girl had already come to Robert. "She's so immature," Robert said. He was worried that she was gone for so long, and she didn't even warn him that she would be late. Inez told Robert that the girl was seriously injured and asked him to keep her for one night. However, it seems that her husband has already reported her missing. Inez tried to tell Robert what happened to the girl. Robert interrupted Inez, saying that he didn't need any explanations because a patient remains a patient under any circumstances. They say that the judge from Hiron was sent to accuse her of adultery. The knight finished his story. "But if that's true," Lane said, "then there's a good chance they'll be arrested together." Lane only needed to give the order, and Inez would have been brought to him in the morning. The girl said that she was Count Iger's maid, and that Ronya was born the night after she caught the Count's eye. If she had told about this child, her head would have been cut off, so she ran away. Inez asked the girl to go to bed in the evening without worrying about anything. She herself promised to feed Ronya, wash her, and put her to bed. The girl told Inez that she had exactly the same eyes as illegitimate children. It was not the first time she had seen something like this. She didn't mean that Inez was an illegitimate child. It was just that her aura was similar to them, the girl said. The girl apologized and thanked Inez for taking them in. There was no need to apologize, Inez told the girl, taking her hand. She didn't have to be grateful because Inez had done little. However, she hoped that the girl would be able to relax today, and tomorrow they would think together about what to do next. After all Inez could count on was Robert's favor. Hearing Robert downstairs, Inez thought he had gone to get herbs. As she was going down the stairs, Inez heard Robert's voice telling someone that he didn't know anything and that they weren't there. Inez didn't understand anything, and a voice unfamiliar to her told Robert that he was talking nonsense. They had information that they were with him. Robert replied that he knew nothing, and Inez immediately thought that this unknown man was a judge. He told Robert that there were witnesses who saw them taken by a girl living in a herbal shop. He threatened Robert to search the place if he did not give them up himself. What a cheeky fellow, Inez thought about the man. Nia's husband had already reported it to the authorities, Inez thought. She should have held on to Kian until the end, even if her life force ran out. Inez needed to go down for a while, so she asked Ronya to sit with her mother while she was gone. As she walked down the stairs, Inez told the man from the authorities that she heard that they came here because of her. Now she asked him to ask her all the questions. There were 3 of them. The one in the middle said that Inez was the girl who took Naya and Ronya here. Black hair, blue eyes. According to the description, it was definitely her. Inez replied that she had not brought anyone here. She had taken them to a hotel not far from the square. Inez said that if they needed it, she could accompany them to that hotel. Robert was excited. He didn't want to let Inez go anywhere, especially with them. Everything is fine, Roberta reassured Inez. She would see them out, and she asked him to go to bed already. She got used to this kind of treatment. Finally, she had someone who was worried about her. It started raining outside. Robert never waited for Inez. He heard someone shouting her name on the street. He went out to look. It was Lane. He realized that the owner of the store had come out. He asked him if Inez was there. Robert asked him who he was, but received no answer. Lane ordered to search every corner of this store and find Inez. Keanu had to follow Inez's orders, even though he hated that it made her breath catch in her throat to the point of making her sick. But his mistress's orders were unquestionable. If Kian were human, he would have stopped her. No matter how many times Inez went through all this, she never thought she could get used to this feeling. She didn't feel any pain. The more she used her power, the more she felt death approaching. Inez sent Kian to tell the authorities that neither mother nor daughter had been found, which was what he did best. Kian shows the worst moment in a person's life, making them feel foggy. That's how he brainwashes. It continued to rain. Inez was already completely wet. She was cold. She decided it was time to go back. On the way, Inez bumped into Lane, a man she didn't expect to see at the moment. Inez turned away and wanted to leave, but Lane said that it was useless to continue running away from him. Inez asked Lane how he was able to find her after so much time had passed, and why he came to her interested her no less. Was that the most important thing now? Lane asked. But after such antics with Lycan and Helen, did she really think she could successfully escape? Inez wondered why Kian was silent. Was it because she shouldn't use force anymore? Lane suggested that they first leave there and talk privately somewhere else. She didn't want to go anywhere with Lane. She asked him to let her go and leave. Then Lane asked her what she was going to do here in this weather, continue to stand and get wet in the rain. He hadn't even said what he wanted to say yet, and she was already shaking, Lane thought. He asked Inez not to be nervous because he had not come all this way here to do something to her. Entering the building, Lane ordered the knight to prepare water for the bath. Lane began to dry Inez with a towel, taking off her cloak. She tried to push him away, saying that she could do it herself. Lane asked her to stand still and continued to wipe the raindrops off her. Then Inez, with a voice trembling with fear, asked him what he was going to do with her. Lane didn't understand why he kept looking at this woman, what interested him so much about her. Before Lane answered Inez's question, he asked her to answer his question. He was interested in how she managed to escape from Lycan until April. They couldn't find her for so long. Inez replied that it was only her desire to leave there, and she did it without any outside help. He repeated his question again. He did not believe that she could have escaped on her own, and if she had, then how did she manage to do it? Inez knew that Kian was the only one on her side, so she had to watch her words. She told Lane that he would never know how she managed to escape. Lane said he understood Inez, but pretended to be offended. He then asked Inez if he had ever harmed her, or if his men had mistreated her in the palace. "No, it's not like that," Inez said. But Len continued. He asked her to tell him that if even one person had neglected her, then he would bring that person right now and make him kneel before her. Inez answered no, everyone was friendly to her, and she had everything in abundance. Lane didn't understand why she betrayed him then. This question interested him most of all. He gave her everything, and this is how she repaid him. First of all, before she had lichen and Eleno wrapped around her finger, she had deceived Lane himself. True, Inez thought, he brought her to his warm room, and not to a damp dungeon. He did not force her to do anything, did not ask, did not beat or scold her. She said that she knew how Lane was actually trying to use her. He was showing her so much attention so that she would choose him, because he could really give the title of the Crown Prince's wife to an illegitimate child. Inez is not a fool. She understood from the very beginning that this difficult matter could not be completed. She understood that she had betrayed His Highness. Inez did not want to go back at all. She liked the life she had lived here all this time. She knew that by her actions, she had gotten Lane into big trouble. Those words were not enough, Lane said. He told her that he had heard rumors that war had almost broken out again because of her escape. Tens of thousands of innocent people could have died like dogs. Lane continued, trying to appeal to pity. After all, this time the heads of the royal family of Liechan could have been hanged on the walls of the castle. Inez reminded Lane that she was not from Liechan or even from Geneo. There was no one to protect her in Geneo Castle, even in the imperial castle of Liechan. Whenever she left Eleanor's room, she was met with numerous hostile glances. She didn't understand why she had to sacrifice herself for people who didn't even treat her like a human being. Everyone said it was natural for her to be treated like an insect, and she believed it until she spent 6 months with Robert. She didn't have much time left, so she wanted to live the rest of her life among people who treated her like a human being. "Don't illegitimate children have the right to run away?" Inez asked. She felt it was wrong because all she wanted was to be happy, at least as a human being. Inez told Lane that in Geneo she was taught how to seduce and entertain men. She explained that a bastard, especially a girl, is destined to be a prostitute, and no one is happy with that outcome. And Inez didn't like all this either. She didn't want to live like this. After telling her story about her life in Geneo, Inez asked Lane to let her go. What a strange girl, Lane thought in the meantime. He looks at her and sees her as pathetic and twitchy. She irritates him to the point of horror, but for some reason he still doesn't want to take his eyes off her. Meanwhile, Robert was trying to find Inez. He went out into the street and walked, shouting her name, hoping that she would respond. Lane decided that he would keep Inez with him. No matter how he did it, it didn't matter to him. Lane sent Inez to the bathroom, telling her that she shouldn't go outside in the rain. Inez lay in the bath and didn't understand what to do now. What to do? She clearly didn't want to go back with Lane. Inez understood that if she decided to escape again, she would have to take power from Kian again. But then you'll have to hide somewhere further than Karen and the herbal store. As strange as it may seem, when Inez learned that she had no more than 10 years left, it was as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders and her heart sank. Inez decided to observe the situation for a while. She considered Lane to be a rude person, but not at all evil at heart. If she goes with him, then she won't have to cut off the rest of her life, and she doesn't have that much left. What she really wanted most was to cling to that hope, to enjoy a life again in which she could feel safe and not constantly hiding from something. Coming out of the bath, Inez saw Lane. She didn't expect him to be waiting for her. He extended his hand to Inez and offered to take her away. Inez thanked Lane, but declined his offer to accompany her, saying she would get there on her own. She was grateful to him for listening to her request. She promised to keep in her heart everything he did for her. Finally, Lane said that if she needed help, he was always happy to help her. She just needed to come back here. But doesn't he have to go back? Inez asked. Lane is, of course, a busy man. He has come a long way here, and imperial affairs do not wait. They also need to be dealt with. But he told Inez that he wanted her to always be safe. So he will return to Kairan in 10 days. If Inez is not in this place at the appointed time, then he will immediately return to Eleanor. Inez realized that Lane was trying to give her 10 days to think about it. But there was no need for that, she replied. Inez was sure that she would not change her decision to stay in Kairan. Inez was sure that no matter how much time they gave her, she would not return. She returned to Robert. He brought her hot tea so that she wouldn't catch a cold. He didn't understand what Inez was thinking when she went outside in such weather. There was a real storm outside the window. Robert was curious what Inez had told the judge, since they clearly hadn't found the girl and child at the hotel. Inez replied that there was no need to worry about it now. Everything would definitely be fine for a while. Robert was also worried that Inez might get into trouble since she had been gone for so long. He also said that while she was gone, some nobleman came and looked for her, and she immediately realized that it was Lane. Inez thanked Robert for everything he had done for her. It seemed to her that here she could finally have a normal life. She would happily stay there until the end of her days. Inez now reminded Robert of his granddaughter. She died at about the same age as Inez. When he meets children like Inez, his heart squeezes with pain. Inez was sure that 10 days would pass as quickly as the 6 months that she had lived here. She just needed to wait a little, and everything would be as before. But it's not that simple. Lane decided that he would take Inez at any cost and would not leave her alone. Inez read the document that hung on the wall. It said that the Continental Peace Agreement was broken. The royal family sided with the Lycans, and the peace agreement between Lycan and Geneo collapsed, and the Kingdom of Apel became part of the empire. All the people around were excited. They were worried that now they would declare war. Everyone was talking about their own things, some about Lycan and his problems, some about the need to leave for the eastern continent. But everyone at the same time blamed the runaway illegitimate daughter for this. After all, if she had obediently gone to Lycan, then this arrogant empire would have been ashamed, and Geneo would not have acted in this way. Inez didn't understand what was happening. "Listen up, everyone!" shouted the guy standing in the center of the square to get people's attention. He said that there was a rumor going around that the kingdom had good reasons to side with the Lycans, because they said that Apel was hiding an illegitimate daughter, and she was supposedly hiding in Tyrant. Inez's portrait was already on everyone's radar. The guy was turning everyone against her, saying that if people don't want war, they should find her. The guy said that he saw Inez, and if anyone noticed her, they would have to immediately drag her to the police. Inez still didn't understand what was happening. Not only peace in Chiron, but also in all of Apel now depended on the capture of Inez. While Inez stood there thinking about what was happening, a little boy noticed her. She realized that she needed to urgently flee from this place. People were indignant that tens of thousands of people could die because of her alone. Here she heard that people realized that the black-haired girl who appeared in Chiron 6 months ago was definitely the one from the herbal shop. Inez urgently needed to escape. Kian encouraged her to use force, but Inez did not want to. He urged her to teach them all a lesson, to plant the seed of misfortune in them, but Inez did not want to do this. Better to be killed on the run than to be caught, Inez thought. But if she does this, then what will happen to Robert? They will clearly not leave him alone, considering that he knew this all this time and hid it from everyone. Kian said it was best to leave now. He felt negative energy. But Inez couldn't leave Robert. She decided that it would be best to return to the store now. The girl noticed something strange outside the window and told Robert about it. Robert asked her what was the matter. "A whole crowd of people is coming towards them," the girl told Robert. The girl was worried that people had found out about their location and were coming after them. But Robert said that was out of the question, since only Inez and he knew about it, and they hadn't told anyone. He ordered them to lock themselves in a room and sit quietly. Naya asked her to tell the truth if there were police officers who came for them and their daughter. She didn't want Robert and Inez to have problems. Robert said that she talked too much and headed towards the exit of the room. Inez ran to Robert. Everything was turned upside down. There was no one. She realized that people had already been in the store. Inez realized that she had made a big mistake by deciding to spend the rest of her life here. On the street, 2 guys were talking about the fact that the black-haired girl had not yet been found. They thought that Robert had hidden her because he had been able to do this for the last 6 months. One of them found the news of the failure of the negotiations very strange. Usually news reaches Chiron with a great delay, but here, all of a sudden, the negotiations ended quickly, the guy thought. Inez heard the quiet sounds of sobbing and walked towards them. She had difficulty breathing, and there was a smell of blood and iron all around. Inez found Naya and her daughter. Naya asked her where she had been. Naya told her that the police were outside looking for Inez, and it was dangerous for her to stay there. Inez only replied that everything was fine and that she had nowhere else to go anyway. They all returned to Robert together, Inez sitting next to him with a sad look. He was almost 70 years old. He had serious injuries, broken ribs and a broken left ankle. Their store is visited more often than the pharmacy, and everyone knows Robert. And if it weren't for his gentle nature, none of this would have happened. She knew she shouldn't have dragged Robert into this mess. Naya approached Inez, and Inez asked her to tell her how it all happened with Robert. Naya said that at first just people, young citizens, came to him, and he kept refusing, but then the royal army showed up. Inez sat and thought that as soon as the effect imposed on the guards wore off, they would immediately notice the loss. Too many people had to be brainwashed. It was impossible to erase everyone's memory, so such an effect was only a temporary solution. She didn't know how she could survive herself without putting Robert in danger. She understood that she couldn't run away forever. Ronya approached Inez and thought that she and her mother should go to the police station. Inez didn't understand why. Ronya explained that this way they could gain time. She was sure that Inez would have done the same for them. Naya and Ronya will go to the police station and say that they know where Inez is. This will distract them, and Inez and Robert will be able to escape during this time. That was Ronya's plan. Inez didn't allow them to sacrifice themselves for her. She said that they should go to a safe place where they couldn't be found. A new poster appeared on the wall with the news that the illegitimate daughter was turning herself in to the police. Inez was being led by the police. People around were happy that the girl was caught and sympathized with Robert. Some people thought Inez was strange from the very beginning. It was the 10th day. Lane, as promised, was waiting for Inez, but she never came. He decided it was time to leave. The knight didn't understand him because Lane had been trying to find Inez for so long, and now he was spreading false information. They had come so far and then Lane suddenly stopped searching. If he had just said her name, everything would have been so much easier. The knight asked Lane whether to begin preparations for departure. Lane replied that they would wait a couple more days. The knight did not understand him because it was already the 10th day, and besides, a message had arrived from Kyra. Lane didn't let him finish, saying that he was the boss here, and there was no point in forcing him to repeat himself twice, and the knight retreated. Lane also ordered the wrist of the soldier who dared to touch Inez to be broken. Inez ran and was glad that there were no people at all on the road leading to the capital. She did not understand how long she would live on the run, because there was no place for her anywhere in the world. She remembered Lane's offer, how he said that he would return in 10 days and wait for her if she still decided to go with him. She thought how good it would have been now if she had accepted his offer then, if she had not brushed it off. But she still came there, even though she understood that it was already too late. Opening the doors and entering the house, she saw Lane. She was very surprised that he did not leave, but stood in front of her. He said that even now it seemed to him that he shouldn't go anywhere, because she had come after all. She told him that she came to this place to rest, and she didn't expect to see Lane here. She felt safer with Lane than she did with anyone else, and she wondered if she could rely on him. Lane said it looked like she was going to Geneo, but he thought she was better suited to Eleno than that barbarian empire. Inez, with tears in her eyes, asked Lane to give her a guarantee that she could trust him and choose Eleno. Then Lane asked her why she thought he was giving all his strength for her. Inez replied, because he wanted her to become an archduchess and not the wife of the crown prince. Lane replied that he had many ways to force her, but he did not use any of them, and Inez said that she did not believe in gratuitous goodness. And if there was a payment that Lane wanted, he asked Inez if she thought about why he kissed her. Lane walked up to Inez, placed his hand on her cheek, and Inez asked if he loved her. Of course it wasn't love, but lust, Inez thought. That was the real name of the nameless splinter that pierced her heart. She couldn't understand why she hadn't thought of such a simple answer and doubted it. Inez couldn't understand why Lane didn't hate her when she was a woman who had been taught dirty things by an enemy state and sent to destroy its empire. It didn't matter, Lane replied, because she had never done that to anyone before, and from now on she could only do it to Lane. Lane said that if Inez satisfied him, as she had been trained to do, he would fulfill any of her wishes. Lane asked her to go to Eleno with him. If she moved, she wouldn't have to think about war and other things. She would be able to live in his duchy like a human being, as she wanted. Inez was pleased with these words. She was waiting only for them. In Lane's mind, there was satisfaction that she had finally come to him, that he had managed to make it so that she could no longer run away. He gave her a promise that in his duchy she would be able to enjoy what she had not had before. Lane asked her about Naya and Ron, whether she would take them with her to the duchy. Inez recalled that Lane promised to get rid of the regulations regarding the illegitimate child. Lane sat and hugged Inez tightly. She asked him if he could love her. He answered yes, and told her that she could love him as much as she wanted. He asked Inez to do with him all the things she had been taught and those she would like to do with the man she loved. The night passed. The memories were occasionally interrupted. It was dawn on the third day. Inez was finally able to visit Robert. While they were slowly talking and putting everything in its place, Robert became confused and even scared. But the longer they talked, the calmer Robert became about Inez. Inez wanted to leave with Robert, but this was his homeland, and he needed to rebuild the herbal shop. Robert hugged Inez and told her that she could go freely, just remember to write him letters, he wished her a good life. Kian was still trying to stop Inez. He didn't believe that she had decided to leave with him after all. Inez hoped she had made the right choice. Lane promised to love her as a person. Kian was still reminding Inez that you can't trust anyone, she knew, but she hoped it would be true. And Inez herself understood that even if this was a lie, she was ready and wanted to believe it. After all, Inez also had the right to be happy. She wanted to be happy at least for the rest of her life. She no longer wanted to live in fear. She wanted to live happily in a good place and with good people. Inez understood that she might no longer have the opportunity to escape, but this did not stop her. A year passed. Autumn came to Eleno. Lane was sitting and drinking tea when a woman approached him and was extremely unhappy that he had kept the illegitimate child with him. She asked why he was still keeping her in Eleno. At this time, Inez was harmlessly strolling through the garden. The woman clearly didn't like Inez walking around her garden, and she didn't like her at all. Lane recalled that the care of the garden had been in the hands of the Archduchess for generations, so there was nothing strange about Inez walking around the garden. Then she asked him if he had forgotten the will of her late brother. But how could he forget his father's will, he asked. Of course he had not forgotten anything. His father first told him that the previous Archduke had been cut into pieces by his brother, who was an illegitimate child, and then asked him not to bring illegitimate children to Eleno under any circumstances, since if the seed sprouted, it would have to be trampled immediately. The father asked him to make sure that Elena would not be disgraced again because of an illegitimate child. Lane said it was too early to throw her out. He felt too bad to throw her out now. The woman was told that every time after returning from a military campaign, he came to her, and this worried her. She didn't understand why he was going to a woman who was skinny to the bone and not very pretty. Lane told his aunt that he understood what she was worried about, but when the time came, he promised to definitely kick her out. Inez was only treated well in Eleno when Lane was around, but the rest of the time the servants ignored her and hid all the medicine from her. She was going to tell Lane about it. She remembered how Lane promised her that Eleno would be different from Ganeo and Lycan. He promised to take care of it. A whole year had passed, and Inez still hadn't noticed any changes. Upon entering the mansion, Inez met Lane and Miss Kara, who was clearly not happy to see her. Mrs. Kara scolded Inez, saying that she was rude and that one should greet an adult properly when meeting him. Inez sent Juliet to his place, saying that there would be a strong wind and that she had no business wandering around the street. Night fell. Lane, as Inez promised, came to her. But he never stayed with her for long, and this time he was planning to leave. Inez couldn't understand anything. When they made love, he behaved like an animal. But then he calmed down and began to behave as if nothing had happened. They never slept together and did not greet the morning in the same bed. Inez asked him to stay a little longer. She needed to talk to him. The conversation turned to Rona, the girl they brought from Apple. Inez learned that she had been bullied by the maids, so she asked that Rona serve only her. Lane told her that such things were enough to tell the head maid, and there was no need to ask him. But that was the point. Inez was told to ask permission from His Highness. Without his permission, they could not do it. Inez was also worried about the promise Lane had made to her when he lured her back to Eleno. She thought that the first thing a person should enjoy is freedom. Lane asked her what she wanted then. What kind of freedom were we talking about? Inez said that she wanted to go out, because since she arrived here, she had never left the mansion. But Lane took this statement in a completely different sense. He immediately thought that Inez wanted to run away again. But no, Inez explained that she just wanted to get outside the mansion. Lane didn't allow it. He asked her if she hadn't heard what the doctor had told her. She would only be able to come out after the winter had passed, and because Lane was worried about her, she had to stay in his domain. Inez admitted to Lane that the place didn't feel safe for her. Lane took Inez by the chin. She turned her eyes away. He asked what her words meant. Was someone really torturing her here? Inez told how, in Lane's absence, the mansion's servants do not listen to her. He asked her if they refused to follow her orders. But the thing was different. It was as if they stopped hearing Inez's voice, as if she had become an invisible person. She wanted them to at least respond to her words and not pretend like she wasn't there. It would also be good if they stopped hiding medicine from her, Inez added. Their actions were no different from those of the people in Geneo, and this greatly upset Inez. Lane replied that he understood Inez, but he thought that she had an innate morbid sensitivity. When the issue with housing and food was resolved, she had another problem. He promised to tell the head servant about this. He asked her not to say that she wanted to leave for such a reason. Inez told Lane that she loved him. She repeated it 3 more times, but received only silence in response. And at that moment, he was only thinking that he had been worried in vain. Now he was absolutely sure that she would not run away from him. Then Inez asked him if they would go outside the mansion together in the spring. Lane replied that they would. Inez thanked him, and his eyes sparkled with happiness. Time passed, Lane left again, but things got better. The servants no longer behaved like that with Inez, did not ignore or hide the medicine. Ronya was also doing well. The maid stopped humiliating her. Inez was glad that Lane fulfilled her requests. Even Mrs. Kara began to behave more gently with Inez. Although she was still difficult, she stopped driving Inez into a corner as she had done before. Dr. Robert stopped reminding her about life expectancy, and it seemed to her that her body was becoming healthier. Inez had a goal. She was going to improve her embroidery skills, as it suited this place, and she also learned the language of the Lycian Empire. She was confident that if she tried hard enough, she might still be able to fit into this place. Lane now had a new problem. Not much time had passed since the temporary truce with Geneo was concluded, when news came that the Dorcan barbarians from the east had begun to set their sights on the imperial border. Lane warned his aunt that he would have to go there in person, and she was not thrilled about the news. She didn't want to send him to the battlefield again because he had just returned, and she was worried about him. Lane said it wouldn't take as long as Geneo, and this time he'd be able to come back every 6 months. Kyra said that she always believed and still believes that Lane can protect the Empire. Lane said that they were saying that the delegation from Geneo, led by His Highness the Crown Prince, had returned. Therefore, if there were any matters that required urgent resolution, Lane asked his aunt to contact the Crown Prince. Inez accidentally heard that Lane was going on a hike. She was worried about how dangerous this hike was. Lane said that it was not really. While Lane was preparing to leave for the hike, he completely forgot to tell Inez that he was leaving. Lane told Inez that he would return in the summer or early winter. Inez was clearly not happy with this statement. He was leaving for a long time. Inez reminded her that spring would soon come, and she asked if she could go out alone then. She was told that it is very beautiful in spring, and she also really wanted to see all this beauty with her own eyes. Lane pulled Inez close and asked if she still didn't like his mansion, but that wasn't the point, Inez replied. Then Lane invited Inez to go with him to the Rhine Valley. It would be enough to wait 2 seasons of the year. Inez agreed, because there she would already be outside the mansion and with Lane. Finally, Inez gave Lane a clover she had embroidered herself, so that good luck would always follow him. Lane accepted the gift, but said that the thing was useless anyway. Lane left. He asked his servant to keep an eye on Inez and not let her go wherever she wanted. And he ordered the embroidered clover that was given to him to be placed in a drawer of his desk in his office. Lane left, but even after that there were no major changes, and early in the summer, 2 months later, the duchy was visited by the Crown Prince of Lycian, Edgar. Edgar was invited by Mrs. Kara. They had not seen each other for a long time and were happy to see each other. Edgar asked about the new painting that hung on the middle staircase at the top. Kyra said that this painting was sent to the Archduchess, and that in addition to the painting, Inez receives many other gifts. When the whole world turned upside down because of her disappearance, only the Crown Prince voluntarily joined Geneo's delegation. Besides, he was interested in the poor classes of society. This was a picture that only an artist of the Imperial Palace could paint, which meant that the gift was sent by the Crown Prince. Edgar believed that if the Archduke was not at home, the Archduchess must be bored. A year and 3 months had already passed, and Edgar was curious because the Archduchess had never appeared in Lycian's high society. He hoped that she would have time for at least 1 cup of tea. Oddly enough, she is his brother's wife, and he has never seen her. But Kyra was worried that this would be a waste of time for the Crown Prince, as she felt that Inez still lacked a lot of strength to go out into the world. She said that Inez was not familiar with the etiquette and language of the Lichans, and that even the Archduke had forbidden her to leave the mansion. Then the Crown Prince asked to tell him what advice was needed from him. It would soon be noon. He would be happy to finish his business and have lunch with Kyra and the Archduchess. Kyra didn't answer his question. She was upset. She didn't like Inez at all, and she didn't want to spend time with her. Inez went out for a walk, where they met Edgar. He introduced himself and kissed her hand. Inez forgot about etiquette because of the surprise of the kiss on the hand, but she was not reproached, so everything was fine. She might not have been liked, but they continued the conversation with her. At dinner, Inez held the knife incorrectly, but immediately apologized for it. She felt embarrassed. Edgar told Inez that if she grabbed the knife like that, it would hurt her a lot. Inez was confused again. She made a mistake, but he taught her the right way and didn't scold her like everyone else did. She considered him an amazing person. During the walk, Edgar asked Inez how she was living here and if she liked everything. She replied that last year was a bit difficult for her, but lately everything has been fine. Inez waited for autumn. She waited for Lane because he promised that they would go outside the mansion together. Edgar had already heard that she wasn't allowed to leave the mansion without Lane's permission. He wondered why she needed permission. But Inez herself did not know the answer to this question. She had no choice but to wait. Edgar asked if Inez loved his brother. Inez could not answer this question clearly. She only said that this feeling is similar to love because someone wrote that love is 4 seasons, and she is constantly waiting for summer to turn into winter. Edgar immediately realized that Inez was reading poetry. She said that some kind person sent her a parcel, and this poem was written in it. She really liked it. Inez admitted that His Highness the Crown Prince seems to her to be an amazing person. Edgar was surprised because he had not done anything special to make Inez think he was amazing. Inez felt very comfortable with him, as if she was already used to him. She thanked him for being able to talk to a new person in a long time. Edgar confessed to Inez that he also really enjoyed spending time with her. During the summer of that year, Edgar visited the mansion several more times during Lane's absence. If he was reviewing the budget project instead of Kyra, then each time during the visit, he drank tea with Inez. And in the afternoon, he talked about some place. Edgar asked Inez to try writing a letter, as if she was chatting with a close friend. She could write about anything. If she sent the letter to the Imperial Palace, it would reach him. If she wanted to send it to someone, Edgar would send it along with his. Time passed. The owner of the mansion returned home, and the Archduke arrived. Lane noticed Edgar and Inez walking together in the garden. He walked up to Inez and kissed her on the lips, but he didn't pay any attention to Edgar. Edgar took offense at his brother, saying that Lane was so passionate with his wife, but didn't even say hello to his brother, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. Lane replied to His Highness the Crown Prince that they had not seen each other for 2 years, and he did not know that Edgar was in Eleno. He thought that his aunt only turned to him for consultations through letters. Inez had not heard any news of the Archduke's return home, so she asked him when he had arrived. Lane replied dryly that he had just returned, and he asked Inez a counter-question about what she had been doing in the greenhouse. She said that she had talked there with His Highness the Crown Prince and had written a letter to Robert. She had been carried away by the conversation, so she knew nothing. Lane asked how long Inez had been outside, if not since she came out after lunch. He asked if he had interfered much with their good time with the Crown Prince. When everyone returned to the mansion, they sat down at the table. Lane said that the question was raised about the possibility of a connection between Genio and the Dorcan barbarians, which is why the order was given. Edgar said that Lane had worked hard and that he had made some minor adjustments to the duchy's budget project during this time, and asked that it be checked after Lane had rested. Inez had heard that the relationship between them was like that of brothers, but what she was hearing now was too formal. Kyra asked Edgar if he would go with her to see his brother Camille next week. Edgar agreed to go with her because he had to see His Highness the former Archduke for the first time in a long time. He also said that in that case this day would be the first day of leaving the Archduchess's mansion. "The Archduchess doesn't have to go there," Lane replied, and whispered to Inez to pretend she hadn't heard. Kyra supported Lane's position, saying that her brother Camille wouldn't be too happy to see Inez either. Edgar didn't understand them because Inez was the wife of the owner of the duchy, and the fact that she didn't even greet him was wrong. Lane got angry at his brother and said that it was none of his business, but Eleanor's business. After leaving the dining room, everyone went to their own rooms to sleep. Edgar is Lane's best friend, and also a close blood family member. They grew up together until the illegitimate child incident and the 7-year war with Guineo. They were in a relationship where you can't help but trust each other. However, recently the question has arisen as to why Edgar left everything as it was so that this woman could escape from the imperial palace. Inez realized that there was something she didn't know. She decided to check with Lane, but he replied that there was no such thing. Then she asked him where they were going next week. Lane said that she had heard that it was Eleanor's business, and besides, this time they wouldn't be for long, they would be back in a week. Lane remembered the covenant left by his father about having an illegitimate child, which is why Inez will never be able to go to his grave. Lane picked up Inez and carried her up to the balcony. Inez was scared, it was very high up there. He calmed her down and told her to hold on to him, but she was haunted by the thought that someone was looking down at them. Lane replied that it was most likely a servant, so he told her not to pay attention to it. After kissing Inez, Lane asked her to answer one question, honestly. He was interested in what she did, what she thought about while he was away. Inez didn't understand what answer Lane wanted to hear from her. Inez was still afraid of falling, and Lane continued to bombard her with questions. He asked what she wrote in the letter she sent to the Kingdom of Appel. He thought she was going to leave Eleanor, but she only described her life to Robert. Inez wasn't going to run away. She was waiting for Lane. He was surprised by this. She was waiting for him because he promised her that they would go to the valley together. Lane recalled whether Inez had always been so beautiful she was afraid, even though she said everything was fine. That's right, that's how it should be. She should be dependent on him and look only at him, Lane thought, because he was the first to meet her. Lane asked that Inez not see Edgar again. Lane allowed Inez to meet with Edgar only in his presence, but not alone. The next morning came, and Inez thought she had gone crazy. She had severe muscle pain, but that was to be expected, since they had spent a long time in that dangerous and uncomfortable place yesterday. Inez decided that she needed to wash herself. She called the servants, but no one came. She went out into the corridor to find at least someone. Inez heard 2 girls whispering. Inez only managed to hear half of the conversation. They were talking about how Uriah saw something yesterday. It was true, the man said. Uriah climbed up the stairs because of the unusual sounds. "God," the girl whispered, "how is it possible, His Highness and this woman?" She was in shock. "There is nothing surprising in this," said another maid, "because His Highness very often visits this mistress." Inez didn't understand what a mistress meant. In addition, the maids heard that the Crown Prince also saw all this, because, as Uriah said, he came out of the same corridor where Lane and Inez were. The servants continued to talk. They noticed that the Crown Prince was also strange. He travelled long distances from Laishan to Helen, and when he arrived, he spent time with Inez. They believed that Inez had first seduced Lane and was now seducing His Highness the Crown Prince. Low origins cannot be hidden, they said. They considered Inez a witch. First she charmed men and then quietly disappeared, as if she had borrowed the power of a demon. Inez saw Edgar. She thought that if he saw and heard everything, and such talk was going on, then they probably wouldn't be able to see each other anymore. Inez didn't find Lane in the office. She noticed an open drawer in the desk and decided to take a look. In the corner of the drawer, she noticed a clover that she had embroidered for him and given to him before leaving for good luck. Inez was upset. Her gift was lying in the It was all covered in dust, which meant that Lane had never taken it out. She asked Perry if Eleno's people really only saw her as Lane's mistress. Lane and Kyra left. Inez thought about what she had been doing for the past 2 years in Eleno. After all, that was all she had done, just spent her nights with the Archduke. She answered her own question. The servant's words were true. Perry also knew that everyone thought the same about Inez. Perry handed over the letter to Inez that the Crown Prince had left for her. She said that she had not told His Highness the Archduke about it. In the letter, he wrote that Inez could write to him whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, and Edgar would wait for her stories. But Inez didn't understand how she could write letters to him at all. Inez recalled telling Lane that she loved him, but receiving nothing in return. Come to think of it, he never answered her at all. Perhaps because he wanted to prove that she had chosen the right path, that she was not mistaken in her choice to fall in love with him, that in this place she would become happy. But was this really so, Inez wondered? But it wasn't like that. For 2 years she never felt happy, and she felt sad about it. Inez was looking for Lane again. Perry warned that His Highness was not in the palace again. But she didn't understand where he had gone. 5 days had already passed, and she hadn't seen him even once. Perry said that he left for Riker at dawn today, and he should probably return next week or the following week. But it was hard for Inez to wait for him in this place even for 1 day. It was the 3rd week of September, the week of the tragedy in Eleno, and at this time Lane left the mansion on purpose. After all, if he closed his eyes, then in his sleep his mother, father and uncle would appear to him one after the other. It had rained just as much this year, Lane thought. Last year, when Lane came here after leaving the mansion, the weather was the same. Uncle Million, a man who was skilled with a sword, spoke well and was able to create a calm environment, even though he was an illegitimate child. But Lane had no reason to avoid him. Lane loved his uncle very much. As a child, Lane didn't know why he was always alone. Lane asked him to have dinner together, but he didn't come. And all because his brother and sister were never happy to see him. Lane didn't understand why Million wasn't liked by his father and aunt. Million explained to Lane that when his grandfather was alive, he was not treated like this. So he thought it would be better if he was not there, and that by receiving extra love, he only became more greedy. Lane only now realized that if he hadn't missed those words and told his father, everything would have been different. His parents wouldn't have died, and he wouldn't have had to deal with his uncle with his own hands. Then Inez approached Lane. He didn't expect to see her. She asked Lane what this place was, since she had a hard time finding it. Lane told Inez that she wasn't allowed to come to that place. He took her away from the cemetery. Inez was angry because Inez did not listen to him. Did his words really mean nothing to Inez? He did not understand. Then Inez asked him why she had to get permission from him for any of her business or actions. After all, she can decide for herself where to go. She hasn't told Lane anything until now, not because she likes the mansion. She sat quietly and calmly because she believed him. She came to him to ask about something. Inez promised to come back when Lane gives her an answer. She wondered if the promise he had made to her had been intended to be broken from the start. She asked if he knew that she was considered a mistress, if he knew how Aunt Kyra treated her. She believed that he had done it on purpose that day, as if for show, even though he felt the presence of a stranger. It's all because she's not even a human being, but a pathetic creature, Inez asked, because it doesn't matter at all what she thinks about. True, she knew her situation too, but Lane promised her that he would change everything. Was it all a lie from the start? Inez asked. Lane asked Inez what if that was the case. He asked if it would make her feel better if he said it was so. He said that if she had not done useless things, perhaps he would have kept his promise. Inez said that if she had known earlier that all her actions were useless, she would never have come to Eleno. But that doesn't give Inez the right to do as she pleases, Lane told her. Lane didn't think of Inez as a person, he thought of her as a doll, but she wanted other things too, Lane reminded her. She wanted a safe place to live, good food, first-class clothes. Lane asked if she lacked any of these things. No, he answered his own question, so he believed that Inez needed to live and enjoy these things, and live as if she were, but at the same time, as if she were not. Another man and another world that he did not allow her. Why did she need them so much? He asked Inez. Inez began to cry. She realized that Lane did not love and does not love her. She understood that if he loved her, he would never have said such words to her. Postponing his return to the Archduchy and the already approaching military expedition to Dorking, Lane spent half a month with Inez in the guest house. Whenever Inez started crying, Lane always became docile. Inez felt sick. She thought it was because she had borrowed Kian's power for the first time in a long time. Lane noticed that something was wrong with Inez. He asked her where it hurt. She didn't answer him. Then he came up and touched her forehead. He said that she had a fever. Inez asked him not to pay attention to it. Lane asked her to listen to him. He picked her up. Lane brought her to the bathroom. He said that it was enough for her to just be the way she was now. Don't irritate him and always be in your place. Then he will give her everything. He didn't understand what the problem was in doing this. If you think about it, Lane kept all the promises he made to Inez during their wedding. This life seemed much better to Inez than when she lived as a beggar in Guinea. She thought about how Lane was still on her side. He saved her, sheltered her, protected her, and kept her safe. But what's the problem? As Lane said, he gave Inez everything, but she wanted more than just to live. She wanted to live like a human being, to love, to be loved, and to live happily. Inez believed that she had made a big mistake and that she could not correct this mistake. Then she made the wrong choice. That was her mistake. She chose him because she loved him. She wanted happiness and paid a high price for it. Love, that was her problem. If she had left Apple with Robert, then none of this would have happened. Inez was only getting worse. She was feeling sick. She couldn't believe that what she thought was true. And today Inez received a letter from him. She thought it was a political move because she could be divorced at any moment. The letter was written about the princess of the royal family, Ignel, the youngest daughter of the Count family of Lusigel. Lane entered the room and handed Inez another letter. Inez told him that it would be nice not to have to get that anymore. Lane asked her why she said that. She confessed to him that she was pregnant by him. She was told that the period was a little more than 2 months. She told him about it. But if 2 months, then when exactly? Lane asked. It happened then, at night on the balcony, Inez said, because Lane wasn't there before. Lane thought that if he had known about this earlier, he would have used all his resources to avoid going on the expedition before the child was born. He asked Inez if he hadn't said that it would be difficult for her to get pregnant. But this was only for the best, he thought, because with this he would be able to keep Inez in Elena for the rest of her life. Inez said Lane shouldn't worry. She didn't think the baby would be born safely. The doctor told her that there was a high probability of miscarriage, and Inez wasn't particularly looking forward to it either. No, Lane replied. This child will definitely be born healthy. That's how it should be. Inez was afraid that Lane thought it was Edgar's child, but she should breathe a sigh of relief because he didn't get angry and ask her to get rid of the child. Inez knew that this child would not be welcomed warmly in the duchy. Inez felt like she wouldn't be able to live long after she gave birth. The doctor came and said that since nothing hurt, she should be more careful than usual. That's how, Inez thought. The man who had never treated her properly told her that. Would it be different this time? She wondered. To be on the safe side, Inez contacted Robert through Perry. Robert will arrive in a month, so Inez needs to be careful until then. It would be good if Inez managed to survive all this safely, but she knew she might not be able to do it. Kyra came to Inez. Inez did not understand what she was doing there, why she came. After all, she had never visited her. Kyra asked her if this child was really Lane's. Inez didn't understand why both her nephew and her aunt were so similar. Kyra tried to warn Inez that if she dared to have the seed of the Leechan imperial family in her, Inez did not let her finish. She told Kyra that she knew that such a possibility did not exist and could not exist. All the servants were the eyes and ears of the aunt. Didn't they watch Inez's every move? Inez thought that Kyra thought that everything would work out if Inez was gone, because then Kyra's son would rule the duchy. Kyra got angry because the more time passed, the more Inez began to object to her. She asked Inez if she really thought that if she had a child, she would be able to become the mistress of Eleanor. His Highness approved of this, Inez said, and she also said that she did not need the position of hostess. Kyra thought Inez was smart, but asked her to stop because her lies were obvious. She said that if Inez thought Lane would always be lenient with her, she was wrong. Kyra asked Inez not to act arrogantly because even if a son was growing in her belly, it had not yet been decided whether he would be the heir or not. Before leaving, Kyra said that Inez's child would always remain her child. It would be better if it were a daughter, Inez thought. If everyone knew that it was Elena's daughter, then there would be no misunderstandings, and Inez would be able to protect her child from Aunt. But, however, if this is suddenly a son, Inez thought, what should she do then? They won't give her any peace. After Inez confessed that she was pregnant, Len made sure to have dinner with her at least once if he was in the mansion for more than a week. Lane noticed that Inez didn't look very well. Inez replied that everything was fine, nothing unusual. Lane had been very busy lately, so maybe it was because of dissatisfaction, but she never told him that she loved him. Although she used to say it very often, this made him wary. Lane said that the chef seemed to have terrible skills. He decided to order him to be replaced. Inez replied that it was not necessary. Lane asked Inez to at least eat dessert, but she replied that she did not want to eat. Lane told her to ask for something else, because if you cook dozens of dishes, at least something will be to her taste. Inez told Lane that she would eat. He didn't understand what was going on, because Inez was given everything, and he was told that she didn't skip meals. But why, every time he saw her, did she become thinner and thinner? Inez asked Lane when the baby was born and grew up a little, she would be able to move to the southern villa. Inez thought that then she could divorce Lane. What does this mean? Lane asked. If a child is born, be it a son or a daughter, then he will be the only direct descendant of Eleanor. And the sooner the heir's education begins, the better, Lane said. So if Inez wants to go on vacation with the child for more than a month, it will be impossible. Lane asked Inez how long she was going to keep talking about wanting to leave. He said that this time she wouldn't be able to go anywhere either. Inez said that she thought a lot about how long they should continue this married life. Divorce is of course a disgrace, said Inez, but still better than leaving her in the place of Archduchess. Inez admitted that she saw the marriage proposal. She believed that there were many ladies who could improve the reputation of the Eleno family, so Inez wondered if it would be better if she disappeared now. Lane responded that if she wanted a divorce, it should have been done before she got pregnant. Regarding the marriage proposals, Lane said he would not accept them. They were of little value. He apologized if this caused misunderstanding. This was unexpected for Inez. He asked her for forgiveness, but what was he apologizing for, she thought, was that he himself was thinking about divorce. But that was only one of many reasons. Inez said that there was no need for this. There were still 6 months left before the baby was born, so he still had time to think. But there's no point in even thinking about it, Lane said. His decision is final. Inez will never be able to go anywhere with his child. This desire to possess, after all, he initially only wanted her body, Inez thought. Then Inez asked to protect her child. Even if she died, her child would have to live. Lane asked Inez why she was telling him this. He promised and asked not to raise this topic again. In the early spring of this year, the problem of the aggression of the Dorcan barbarians arose again. The Archduke could not escape responsibility. Since he had not led the army for several months, his guilt was significant. It had not been long since Lane had left when one day Inez fainted. There were no deviations, but it seems that the closer the month of the child's birth, the greater the load on the body. Inez was asked to try drinking tea brewed from the root of Manonda. It helps to restore energy well. Inez had an uneasy premonition. Mr. Robert entered Inez's room. Inez was happy that they finally met. She got out of bed and ran to him. Robert noticed that Inez didn't look well. He asked if she was okay. He asked her why she looked like she was going to die. With tears in her eyes, Inez told Robert that she was not okay. Robert asked her if Inez had drunk Manonda tea, and Inez told him that she had. Robert asked her who told her to drink it. Inez explained that she was told that it would help restore energy. She drank it every day. She asked Robert if there was a problem with it. Such tea cannot be drunk with the particularities of her body, Robert explained to her. For a person with such poor circulation, this stimulant is like poison, Robert asked Inez since when she had been drinking this tea. Inez said that 2.5 years ago her doctor prescribed this tea to her. Robert was furious. He did not understand whether this doctor did not know the particularities of Inez's body. But he couldn't help but know this, Inez thought. The person who could keep Eleno under the control of the attending physician was Aunt. Inez knew she didn't like him. Inez realized that it was she who was going to kill her and her child. They entered Inez's. She didn't understand how it happened that they came right after Robert left. Her aunt and her maid entered her room. Kyra brought Inez tea. She asked Inez to drink it. She thought about the medicine Robert had prescribed her that would counteract the tea. But still, Inez was sure that she should drink this tea as little as possible. Kyra asked Inez why she didn't drink tea, since she had specifically asked the doctor to create it for her. Inez understood that she had to protect the child because only he would be on her side, even if she lived alone for a long time. Kyra was angry. She didn't understand what Inez was doing and why she wasn't drinking tea. Inez answered the carer that she was not a fool. She said she wouldn't drink the tea and poured the entire contents onto the floor. Kyra realized that Inez had found out what she was giving her to drink. Inez told her aunt again that she need not fear her. Inez thought that now she would really use her power for the last time because now she had something to protect. Kyra said she was told that an unknown adult man came to Inez at dawn. Was this the child's father? She asked Inez. Inez tried to leave, but her aunt told her to stay put. Inez wished her well and continued walking. Kyra was furious. She didn't understand how Inez dared to disobey her. Inez gave birth to a child. She thought how nice it would be if Lane was happy about it. Inez fell in love with him at first sight. Now she knew she had to gain his mercy. She needed to ask to protect her child. She needed to beg until the very end. She was sure of it. Lane, meanwhile, was returning home. He didn't receive any letters from his aunt, but he was sure that the child had already been born. Entering the mansion, Lane was very surprised by what he saw. There were many unfamiliar faces among the servants in the mansion, but the assistant was not replaced. He told Lane that many of the servants had quit last month. Lane asked if it was his aunt's decision to fire many of the servants, since in his absence, she was the only one who could make decisions about it. But in reality, everything was not so. Kyra was not involved in the dismissal of the servants. The assistant began to tell Lane about what happened. In defense of her rights as Archduchess, Inez began to interfere in the internal affairs of the mansion and changed all the servants, his assistant told him. The assistant apologized to Lane as well because he should have stopped her. Lane didn't tell him anything. He just asked what was wrong with the child. The baby was fine, no abnormalities, except that he was born a month early. Lane was surprised that Inez gave birth a month early. He asked about her condition. Her Highness is also well, the assistant said. Lane asked if there had been any strange activity since Inez gave birth, such as sending letters or communicating with strangers. The assistant replied that none of this happened, and Lane felt calmer. But his assistant warned him that there was actually a more serious problem. Inez hoped that Lane would not doubt the child. She thought about what name to give him. Inez came to Lane. She asked his assistant to tell him about it. He replied that His Highness was not in his place at the moment. Inez immediately realized that something was wrong. She asked what happened. He told her that Lane had gone to investigate why the servants in the mansion had been replaced and what had been going on there until now. Inez replied that she would wait for him here then. But this investigation took longer than she thought. She sat for a very long time. She thought whether he would interrogate her when he returned or not. Finally, Inez met Lane. "Long time no see," said Lane, looking at the child. He asked dryly if it was the same child. Inez replied that yes, she was holding their son in her arms. He asked his name, but Inez had not yet given him a name. After all, he was the child's father, and Inez thought that he would name him himself. Lane told her that she had probably already thought of some names, and he asked her to name him one of them. "Then what about Caesar?" Inez asked. Lane said great, asked Inez to name her son that. He asked Inez if she was well. He told her again that she did not look very well. Inez said she was fine, it didn't matter right now. More importantly, she asked Lane to hug Caesar at least once. Lane picked up the baby, but was clearly not happy with him. Lane suggested that Inez find a nanny for Caesar. Inez refused. She wanted to take care of her child herself. "He's handsome, isn't he?" Inez asked Lane. Inez said that Caesar's eyes looked like Lane's eyes. But after looking at the child, Lane told Inez that Caesar was more like her. Lane asked Inez why she had changed all the servants in the mansion, why she had done this. Inez explained that Aunt Kyra gave her tea that was poisonous to her body. And besides, all this time no one perceived her as an archduchess. So she changed the servant who neglected her. Inez told how her aunt scolded her for this and threatened to kill the innocent child. Inez said that she couldn't stay where Aunt Kyra was, so she wanted to go south. Inez had mentioned divorce 6 months ago. Could it be because of her aunt? Lane thought. Kyra was callous towards Inez, but she was not the type to attempt on her life, Lane was sure. He couldn't understand why she was acting like she was cornered, and he had put the chef in charge of Inez's meals. But she was still thin. Lane promised Inez that he would talk to his aunt. He asked her not to talk anymore about her going south. Inez felt uneasy. Lane believed her words. How so? This can't be, she thought. But she wanted to believe that he was sincere this time because it concerned their son. Inez asked Lane if he could come to her that night. She was already lonely. Lane had been gone from the mansion for a long time, and she didn't want to be alone tonight. Lane was surprised. After the fall of last year, Inez had never approached him first, much less hesitated so ineptly. However, Lane promised that he would come to her that night. That night, Inez asked Lane for only one thing. She knew she didn't have much time left. She asked him to look after Caesar. She was worried about her baby. She was worried that when she was gone, no one would be able to stand up for him. But Lane said that all she had to do was stay in this place, and then there wouldn't be any problems. Inez was curious about what Lane thought of her, so she asked him. Lane replied that he, in turn, was interested in what she thought of him. He knew and understood that Inez was afraid of him. Lane left a very noticeable mark of himself on Inez's neck. He asked her what she was going to do if someone noticed it. Even if they see, Inez replied, everything will be fine, because being embarrassed at this moment is something new. Inez was about to leave, but Lane stopped her, taking her hand. He asked her to stay and sleep with him. And what about Caesar? Inez asked. He would be left all alone. She was worried that something might happen to him. Lane reassured her that no one would harm him in this mansion, so she had nothing to worry about. Inez still tried to leave, but Lane wouldn't let her. Lane had thought that Inez would be there obediently if she had a baby, but now all her attention was directed to Caesar. At some point, that recognition disappeared. Even though she was next to him, it seemed to him that she was somewhere far away. His aunt's condition was worse than Lane thought. They said that she constantly had nightmares. He became interested in what happened in the mansion while he was away. Lane ordered the priest to be called and the list of servants that Inez had dismissed to be reorganized and brought to his desk. Lane asked about what happened in the mansion while he was gone. He remembered how Inez claimed that her aunt had forced her to drink tea that contained poison, and they had quarreled. But the servant apologized to Lane and said that nothing had happened in the mansion in his absence. But then what about Inez's words? Lane thought. She's not the kind of person who would invent something that didn't happen. The servant said that the chef was solely responsible for the tea served to the Archduchess. Lane thought it was all because Inez had become more nervous after her pregnancy. But he was sure that Inez had not made this up. The servants had made a list. More importantly, veteran servants had been dismissed without cause, he said. The transfer of duties had not been properly observed, and the disorder in the mansion was becoming more and more complicated. Lane then ordered an investigation to see if there were any servants on the list who had put pressure on Inez. He said to return to work only those who had not been noticed doing anything remarkable. Inez was sitting in the room with the child when someone burst in and shouted that Inez had put a curse on her, and how dare she do it? It was Aunt Kyra. But Inez didn't understand what she was talking about. This couldn't be, she thought. Kyra slapped Inez on the cheek and called her a bitch. But how? Inez did not understand. Always when she was near her aunt, she restrained the magic. Kyra called Inez a fool. She was sure that Lane would believe her words, but Inez would not even listen. Kyra walked over to the bed where Caesar was sitting, and about this child, she said. She took Caesar in her arms. It seemed that heaven was helping Inez, she said, since they were covering up her adultery like this. Kyra said that Lane is very good at dealing with people like Inez. She recalled how Lane had whispered to Inez that she would be safe, that he would love her. But Million Eleno, the traitor who killed his parents and then escaped, was captured by Lane in exactly this way. Inez was confused. She didn't think Lane hated her enough to lead her around. She thought he was just not interested in her. Kyra turned around and was about to leave with the baby. Inez couldn't allow this to happen. She understood that she had made a mistake. She told her aunt about it. Kyra was pleased that Inez had finally admitted it. She was guilty of everything, but she asked for her child to be returned to her, and in return she promised to die herself. Kyra was interested in the plan. We should have started with this right away. Turning to Inez, she said. She said that if Inez wanted her child to grow up healthy and strong, she should live as if she were dead. The agreement between the worlds of Lishan and Genio was not broken, as it turned out. But in Chiron then, that incident occurred where they said that they were going to declare war if Inez did not return. Inez's peace was disturbed and Robert was then wounded, but the world says that nothing happened. Kian tried to protect Inez. He was ready to kill everyone for her. He was just waiting for her consent. What about Caesar? Inez asked, because if Kian uses force, she will die immediately. She couldn't agree to this, because if Kian killed everyone, then Inez would die too. And what will happen to her son? She asked, because then he will be left completely alone. Inez was in despair. She did not understand what to do, how to act in this situation. If she thought about it, the only reason she had to live was to hear the sound of Caesar's little heartbeat, she thought. Inez didn't want to do anything anymore. She was willing to endure, so she kicked Kian out, saying that she wouldn't call him again. Kian was clearly not happy with this outcome, but he meekly left, wishing her well in her stay. Inez realized that she shouldn't have chosen Lane, but if she had chosen Edgar or just found her place, then none of this would have happened. However, she knew that there was no point in regretting it. After all, everything has already been done, nothing can be changed, and nothing will change on its own. 3 years passed, the Duchy of Eleno overcame the war and peaceful times came. However, Lane still left the mansion. As soon as the war ended, the Lishan imperial family began to call him often. The time when he could not see Inez for several days increased due to frequent trips, which became even more numerous than during military campaigns. But even after the fight that happened 3 years ago, Lane would occasionally go out with Inez for dinner, and that was their only communication. Lane finished his business and said it was time to get ready to leave. Alvaron warned Lane that Inez had asked him to convey that it would be difficult for her to keep Lane company today. Lane asked what was wrong. Inez suddenly broke the promise she had kept for 3 years. Alvaron said she didn't give a reason, but said she wanted to rest. But that's the same as saying there's no reason. Lane was indignant. He decided to go to her himself. Meanwhile, Inez was talking to Caesar. She asked him to be sure to remember everything she told him. She asked him not to eat anything that his great-aunt would give him, and to ask his father to hug him twice a week. Inez would try to tell Lane herself, but she wanted Caesar to try to get his father's attention too. Lane walked up to Inez's door and asked permission to come in. They needed to talk for a bit. Inez let Lane in and asked him why he had come to her on his own. Didn't Alvaron pass on her words? She asked Lane. Caesar stood next to Inez and looked at Lane. He called him. Lane wondered if he would have liked Caesar if he had been even a little bit like him. But as long as Inez was there was no point, he thought. Lane asked Inez if she had forgotten that today was the day they were supposed to get out of the mansion. But Inez remembered this very well. At that time, Lane didn't understand what was going on. He asked if she was feeling okay. Inez replied that she felt as usual. She didn't understand why she was so nervous. She had a feeling that if he put his hand on her shoulder, she would lose consciousness. Then Lane told her to start getting ready, and when she finished, they would go. At that moment, Caesar called Inez. Then Lane realized that she didn't want to go because of the child, and asked her about it. But Inez said it wasn't about the baby, and then Lane didn't understand why Inez wasn't acting like herself. But Inez behaved as usual. She lived as before, as if she were dead. Was it because she disobeyed an order that Lane decided she was acting differently than before? Lane just wanted to hear the reason why Inez refused to go with him. Lane still tried to find out why she couldn't go. Maybe she was unwell or something had happened. But Inez still couldn't understand him. If she said that she wasn't in the mood, then why should there be some reason for it? Lane asked Inez to tell him if she was unhappy about something. Lane noticed a slap mark on Inez's cheek. She was offended, because when she is sincere with him, he does not even look at her. But if she does not act according to his wishes, then he immediately comes running. Inez said that now Lane knew the reason why she couldn't go with him. She asked him to forget about her, and since he came here, she asked him to spend time with Caesar. But Lane asked her to stop talking about the child. He wanted to know who did this to her. Inez asked what was wrong with him all of a sudden, because whatever she did, whatever she was subjected to, it had nothing to do with His Highness. Inez thought she understood what Lane's increased attention to her was about. She asked Caesar to leave the room for a while, but that was not what Lane wanted. Inez thought that although Lane had come not because he wanted it from her, her words had hurt him. Then she asked what was the matter, because they always did this when he came to her. Lane did not understand who she took him for. She replied that she took him for the owner of this place, and also her master. But if that's not the case, then why is he behaving like this? Inez asked him. Lane didn't understand how he could be okay if his wife had been slapped in the face in his mansion. Inez asked Lane to just do what he always does. After all, this is not the first or second time this has happened to her, so what came over him? Lane was not ready to hear these words. He did not understand how and who could do this to her. Inez was sure that if she went out looking like this, she would become a laughingstock. She said that she didn't want to go anywhere at all anymore. She wanted to spend more time with Caesar. She was sure that Lane hated her, so there was no point in her continuing to go out for the sake of appearances. Lane wondered if he really hated Inez. That's how it was. Lane hated illegitimate children. Is that why he's angry? Lane wondered, that some illegitimate child is standing up to him. Lane asked the maid to call the attending physician. Inez tried to stop him, saying that if he left everything as it was, the trail would disappear on its own. But Lane didn't listen to her. He himself was not okay. After all, in this mansion, which should be the safest place, she managed to get hurt. The doctor arrived, the same one who had once given Inez poisoned tea on the orders of Aunt Kyra. First, he removed the swelling with a cold towel. Then he would bring an ointment that would need to be applied to the wound. Inez wanted to be alone with Caesar. She asked Lane to leave them. Lane reluctantly left, not closing the door to Inez's room all the way. The view from the gap in the door was a beautiful spectacle of mother and son. Today was clearly not that day, Lane decided. He was sure that he would see her many more times anyway, and then he would ask about today. Inez now didn't want to go out even once every 6 months, but Lane was sure that these were just words spoken in a fit of emotion and not sincere feelings. Even after this incident, Inez's daily life was the same. She taught Caesar letters and read books to him. She played with toys with him, and it was these little things that made up her whole day. Lane was angry that Inez knew nothing but Caesar. She skipped meals, didn't take her medications, and didn't go outside. What infuriated him was that she only cared about Caesar. Lane heard those words when Inez asked Caesar to remember that he should not eat anything that his great aunt did not give him. Lane felt like Inez was acting like she was ready to leave at any moment. Nothing gave him peace, not even her dull and dejected gaze. A body that somehow became even thinner. He asked her again if she had any abnormalities, but Inez was completely healthy. The attending physician had worked at Eleanor for 20 years, so at first Lane did not doubt his words and believed him. Everything was so, but Lane felt heavy at heart. He thought that after the birth of the child, Inez would behave quietly, as usual. What's suspicious is that a few days ago, Lane failed to find the person who hit Inez on the cheek. He gathered all the servants, but no one opened their mouths. Only one person in the mansion was capable of such a thing, Lane thought. He was sure that Kyra did it. He came to talk to her. He thought she would say it was nonsense. He didn't understand why she remained silent. She asked if anything was bothering Lane, and he said no. She then told Lane that Vernon had completed his academic course. Vernon Adelvine, Kyra's son, came of age this year, and his aunt asked Lane to introduce him to high society as Eleanor's heir. Lane didn't like her words. He asked her why Vernon suddenly became Eleanor's heir. Kyra responded that she was only suggesting that we be open to possibilities. After all, Lane's son is still very young, and Vernon has already become an adult. But Lane replied that there was a direct heir, so there was no need to look for an heir among relatives. Lane said that after some time he plans to get the staff in order and then review the budget. It seemed to him that all this time he had not paid attention to the state of affairs in the family. He wandered around the world and was inattentive to the internal affairs of the family. Kira found it strange that Lane was going to check all the servants in the Duke's estate. She is sure that she is not putting much pressure on him, but just wants to check. If Inez had seduced him, then Kyra would have gone to extreme measures. She looked at the teapot next to which stood the mugs. Inez loved Cesar more than anything in this world. After all, without him, it would have been very difficult for her. Cesar was the only child who loved Inez unconditionally. She was sure that one day they would be able to meet again, but she didn't know when the end would come, so she filled every moment with love. Inez was afraid of regretting it at the last moment, so she constantly said kind words, as if saying goodbye. Black smoke filled the room, and Inez realized that Kian had arrived. He warned her that she didn't have much time left. But Inez already knew this better than anyone else. Now food was harder to digest, and even a slight cough was accompanied by blood. She really doesn't have much time left. The day she drinks the tea from the Menond root again will be her last. Inez's heart began to beat faster than before. She didn't understand if it was beating like that out of fear, or maybe she lived for this day out of anticipation. Perhaps her death would not be the end, but the beginning, Inez thought. Only death will free her and lead her to the long-awaited paradise. In the past, all she did was be afraid, but now she didn't have an ounce of fear. Now, more than anything, she wanted it all to end soon. She was truly sorry that Caesar had such a mother. Inez called Kian with her. He told her that he also hated this land. Kian agreed, and now Inez truly had no regrets. Lane hadn't seen Inez for a long time. He invited her to his place a week ago. He asked why she came to him so late. Inez replied that she could not come earlier because she was sick. After checking, Lane realized that all the servants who served in Aleno were not loyal to him, and there was no one on his side in this mansion. Lane wanted to tell the reason why he called Inez. But Inez interrupted him, asking Lane to protect Caesar. Lane said he called Inez to talk about her. He hadn't said anything yet, but she was already scared, which seemed strange to him. Inez asked Lane to be a good father. But Lane said that Inez was saying obvious things and asked her to stop this useless conversation. Then Inez screamed at Lane that she hated him. Inez said that she regretted to death that she had chosen him that day. She cursed herself for it. When Lane looked at Inez, he didn't recognize himself. His emotions were going from one extreme to another, and if she called it a curse, then so be it, Lane thought. Inez drank the last cup of tea of her life. And even if there is a next life, Inez whispered, she asked him to do more so that they would not see each other again. Panicked and not knowing what to do, Lane shouted for a doctor. The assistant, not understanding what was going on, entered the room. Lane asked him to bring a doctor. He asked to take Inez to his bedroom. He forbade everyone from entering this room from that moment on. Lane sniffed the cup. It smelled bitter, but it was not poison. But he didn't understand what it could be, what he had missed, how it could have happened. These thoughts haunted him. The doctor returned and said that Her Highness the Archduchess had died. Lane realized that he had always turned a blind eye to the shadow of death hanging over her. Inez asked why this happened. The doctor replied that until yesterday there had been no changes. The only thing he had done the whole time was serve his tea as usual. Lane asked what kind of tea it was. The healer said that it was a tea brewed from the roots of the herb Menond. It was good for restoring energy. He asked if Lane didn't know about this. Perry couldn't stand it. She intervened in the conversation. She was sure that the doctor knew what side effects he had on Inez's body. What side effects? Lane asked. He was sure Inez hadn't had any problems. This tea makes the heart beat faster and the blood circulate faster. It has a stimulating effect on healthy people. But for a person with poor circulation, this stimulant is like poison. Perry remembered Inez saying she wouldn't take that poison again, but she did it anyway. Lane realized that Inez knew all this. Lane remembered the words Inez had said to him after she had drunk her tea. These words were her last will. After today's conversation with Inez, everything was supposed to go differently. Lane was going to expel from the mansion everyone who threatened Inez and Caesar. Once he was sure that they could live peacefully in this duchy with Lane Eleno at its head, Then Inez would start smiling again. If only Inez would wake up, everything would be perfect. Lane didn't understand why she did it. He didn't understand why she wanted to die. Yes, she might have hated him, but she loved Caesar so much. If only he had realized it sooner, Lane blamed himself for Inez's death. Robert entered the room. She said that Inez would not have lasted long anyway and would have died. Robert told how he came to her in the middle of the night after fainting. She had little time left after the baby was born, he said. If Lane had only known this from the beginning, he would not have allowed her to have a child. He remembered their conversation when Inez admitted that she was pregnant. Then Robert asked Lane what he knew about Inez.